Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Kingsmen here on EliSportsNetwork.com. You know, you're watching it on Facebook, YouTube, however you're watching it. I'm so thankful that you are. The numbers for the first one just blew me away. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your support, and we are excited to keep this thing going and build it above and beyond. We got some fun stuff coming up here, especially throughout the summer. It is going to be a blast. You're not going to want to miss any of it. And first thing you might notice is, hey, that's not Jacob on the other side of the screen. When we came up with the name Kingsman for this podcast, that's my last name is King. And Jacob is not a big basketball guy. He doesn't like hockey sports. He watches a lot of, when we were talking about it, he's like, we might have to bring in someone else. You might have to talk to someone else. So that is why we added the Kingsmen part. I've got a lot of different people who you're going to see a lot of on this podcast. We'll bring everyone in and out. And that is where Mr. Luke Kilgore comes in. He is going to be our basketball guy. I don't know anyone who loves basketball as much as Luke. So Luke, thank you so much for hopping on as we are ready to talk about some NBA playoffs.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be one of the Kingsmen, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an honor for me.
So glad to have you. You got the M's and Cougs repped in the background. I love it. Love them both. I'm stoked about that.
And we got, you can barely see it, but we got the Sonics there too, a little bit.
Dude got the oh, that's even better.
That's Sean Kemp 92 right there. Bring him back. Bring him back.
What are we even doing? All right, let's hop right in. Let's start with the play-in. It was an interesting basketball season. Fans back everywhere. Of course, the whole situation, vaccination requirements in New York kind of changed things around. And I think that's a perfect place to start because the 7 seed in the East, the Brooklyn Nets, whether they win tonight, lose tomorrow, I don't see them not getting in. They're going to be the best 7 or 8 seed, maybe in NBA history.
Of all time. Yeah.
I don't have any doubt that they knock off the Cavs and they punch their ticket to go take on Boston in the first round. This team's just loaded, and with Kyrie back now, Ben Simmons is going to play as well. Defense is going to give it a lot better. This is a very dangerous 7 seed.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. I mean, Kyrie just dropped 60 points not even a month ago, scored 50 just 7 days before that. And so he's been on fire since they've kind of just let him loose. Obviously, like you said, with the vaccination requirements and all that sort of a thing, this season's been weird. It's been a really big question mark, and there's no doubt the Nets would be way higher, a top 3, top 4 seed in the East had it not been for that. And then, of course, you got Kevin Durant, right? One of the best scorers ever, playoff god, just scored 53 a month ago, just dropped a career high 55 a couple weeks ago, averaging 29 points against the Cavs. Good luck, Cleveland. I know that Ben Simmons is not going to play here in the play-in, maybe plays in the first round, but you got to ask, do you even want to disrupt it at that point? Like, is that going to help you get wins when he hasn't played in well over a year? So I don't know. It's a big question mark, buddy, but I know that the Nets will destroy this young Cleveland team.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Ben Simmons coming in, maybe messing up the flow of the team. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit as we get further into the playoffs. But yeah, Brooklyn, I think we can both agree, runs through Cleveland, gets into the playoffs as a 7 seed to take on Boston. Over in the West, the first matchup is a little bit more intriguing. Minnesota and, of course, your Clippers, you're repping them right away. The Clippers are not a team you want to overlook either, but this Timberwolves squad, they're young and they're talented, and I know a lot of people are excited about them this season and into the future.
There's a lot of experts that are really split on this play-in game, right? And it makes sense. The Timberwolves, as far as regular season metrics, they were the best scoring team in the league, which kind of surprises people. I call this one the Pat Beverly Bowl, by the way.
There you go.
I'm going to sound biased, right? I'm rocking all the Clips gear, but the Clippers are hot right now, and this season was already thrown out the window long before the trade deadline. I mean, when we knew that Kawhi and PG were going to take a long time to get back, we were all skeptical. And then you have Paul George, who just recently came back. What he's averaging 22.6, 6.8 assists, and just under 3 steals a game in his final 5 appearances of the season. And this is the same Paul George that without Kawhi for almost the entire playoffs helped carry the Clippers to their first Western Conference final last year. And then you add on, they got Norman Powell at the trade deadline. He's averaging 21.4 on some crazy shooting splits, like 51% from the field, 54 from three. Reggie Jackson is always deadly, 16 points per game. Marcus Morris is as solid as they come, just over 15 for him. And then you've got Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, Ivica Zubats, Robert Covington, Amir Coffey. They're all averaging double digits this season, and they're all healthy. That's the thing, is the Clippers rested everybody for the last game, and you just don't really know what you're going to get with this Clips team this season. It's kind of, I mean, it's obviously the Nets have the star power, but it's kind of another wild card. It's like you don't really know what you're going to get in the playoffs with this Clippers team because they're pretty darn close. Besides Kawhi Leonard, they're pretty close to full strength.
And I've seen a lot of people pick the Clippers to actually get to the Western Conference Finals. I like them to knock off Minnesota. I can't wait to see Karl Anthony Towns get a playoff series. He's so good, and he doesn't get a lot of attention because a lot of people don't watch basketball until the playoffs. They watch for the playoffs. I do think that they get in against the loser of a game or the winner of the game we'll talk about here in just a second. But I do think the Clippers get the win. They take the 7th seed, and they get a trip to take on the Memphis Grizzlies.
But one thing I do want to say, I mean, we talk about Cat. He's obviously one of the best centers in the league, one of the best three-point shooters in the league. Just won that three-point contest at All-Star break. But you've also got D'Angelo Russell, who leads the offense, 18 points per game, 7 assists. Anthony Edwards is my wild card no matter what they do in the playoffs. Anthony Edwards is my wild card because he's got that dog in him. He's got that Ja Morant feel. And you watched the playoffs last year, I'm sure. Ja Morant was absolutely out of his mind. I think that that Anthony Edwards is another one of those guys that has that potential. He's averaging 21 points per game on 53% shooting, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, plays good defense. I just feel like he's going to have I don't think they beat the Clippers here, but I think that they do win out and make it in as the 8th seed. I think he's going to have some crazy statement games, or at least one.
He's got that Georgia Bulldog mentality, some might say. I think he's got a very bright future. That dunk he had last year that just set the world on fire, I think really got him to become a name to watch, and he's really stepped up here in his 2nd year. But yeah, we both agree Clippers get the win there. Let's hop up to the other West play-in game, the Pelicans and the Spurs. You want to talk about a weird season? The Pelicans might be the weirdest of them all with the whole Zion situation, but they continue to play solid basketball. They're always competitive. You can't overlook them no matter what. The Spurs, though, they have Pop. I mean, it's so hard to bet against Greg Popovich in the playoffs. I'm really split here. I'm giving the slight edge to the Pelicans, but man, this could go either way.
It could go either way. I just think Pop is dealing with one of the lesser teams that he has pretty much his whole career. But that's not to say that guys like DeJounte Murray don't have a ton of potential. I mean, in the regular season series against the Pelicans, the Spurs, I think DeJounte had nearly a triple-double he was averaging, 18 points per game, 9.8 rebounds, and 10 assists through 4 games. But one thing is, and you mentioned this is a really weird season for the Pelicans, right? It's been the wait on Zion season, and it just has never happened. And there's even some, I mean, reading through some of these previews, there's even some analysts that are still crazy enough to think that if they make it in, that he's going to try to make a comeback. And while he does seem to be at a healthy weight, I don't see it. Pelicans started 1-12 on the season. People forget that. And then a trade deadline acquisition of CJ McCollum salvaged everything. That's the only reason that they're even here. So what's up?
When you get that go-to score, that can solve a lot of problems. I agree with you. I don't think Zion should even come back if they get into the playoffs. I wouldn't like that at all. We talk about camaraderie, but it sounds like we both are leaning towards the Pelicans getting the win there.
Yeah. I think that DeJounte, I mean, he relies a lot on dribble penetration. The Spurs do in general. They're like the 28th team in the league for 3-point shooting. They don't shoot threes. DeJounte's bad at them. And the Pels have guys like Valanciunas. They got Jones, Larry Nance Jr. that are going to make the inside attack really hard. So I expect the Pelicans to really lock down the paint and make the Spurs shoot, which they can't do. So that's where I see the edge coming, and I see CJ McCollum just going nuts because he has feasted as a Pelican against the Spurs this season. So
All right, let's hop over to the East. The other matchup, the 9th-seeded Hawks take on the 10th-seed Hornets. I'm going with the Hawks here. I think this might be the biggest blowout of the play-in tournament. What the Hawks did last season was just special, and now they have that experience in the playoffs under their belt. And Trae Young, he's got that it factor. I mean, you want to talk about guys who appreciate the role of villain. He just takes that on. He says, let's do it. I'm the guy. And I think he's going to have a monster game. I'm talking 40 points against Charlotte to get the Hawks into that second play-in game.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take by any means. Trae Young established himself last year as an absolute playoff assassin, winning some series that many thought he shouldn't have, and he was insane. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm really happy for this Charlotte team. They haven't made the playoffs since 2016. This isn't going to be that year either for them, but they've been fun to watch, and it's finally starting to feel like they're turning a corner, right? They have got, like, LaMelo's a stud. I'm really excited to see the Young ball matchup and the highlight lobs that we're undoubtedly going to see. What from LaMelo to Miles Bridges, and then from Trae Young to Capella. But there's like nobody on this Hornets team that has even seen a playoff game before. Gordon Hayward is one of them, and he's not. He's out. He's hurt. So I just there's no vets for the Charlotte Hornets team. They're not really going to know what to expect, and Trae Young he's coming for blood. I mean, I think that they're going to focus the defensive attack on Young, but then you've also got guys like DeAndre Hunter and Kevin Huerter and Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like they've got a better squad just in general than Charlotte. So,
and Huerter last season in that game 7, I believe it was, with Philadelphia. Oh my goodness, he went off. He showed what he can do, and if he can play like that in any playoff series, that Hawks team is just going to be so tough to beat. Let's now hop on. The Hawks would move on, take on Cleveland. This would be another interesting game, but again, I got to go with the Hawks. Here it's because that experience. Again, they've been there, done that last year, getting all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, pushed Milwaukee to the brink before falling just a little bit short with Trae Young dealing with that injury last year. The experience of the Hawks, I think, is really going to overwhelm Cleveland and get the Hawks in just one game into that 8 seed.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, while it would be a really competitive series, in my opinion, because the Cavs, they have the advantage as far as bigs go, right? They're not sure. So Jared Allen's got a fractured finger that he's been dealing with for a while. Not sure if he's going to be back, but it could make life difficult for the Hawks, who are also missing John Collins, their number 2 scorer. So they've got they've got Jared Allen, they've got Mobley and Lauri Markkanen as well. With Garland in, that's usually he really favors getting the ball to the bigs. He's really good at distributing. But I think Trae Young's going to overcome it. Just the young, it's kind of the same thing with Charlotte, right? Except for the Cavs are a lot more talented. They've been a really pleasant surprise this year, but they're just young. They're not ready, and we're going to see more of them. There's no doubt. But yeah, the Hawks are going.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the play-in. It's just one game. You got that one shot to knock off whoever's on the other side of the court. And that's where I think the difference is. So we both have the Hawks taking that 8 seed. In the West, we both have the Pelicans taking on the Timberwolves for that last spot. You want to talk about what will be a fun game. That's the one right there. I have the Timberwolves getting the job done there. I think the size of Cat down low. And like you said, he's a 3-point shooter too. I mean, that guy can just do it all. Everyone wants to talk about Giannis. Cat's doing similar things up there in Minnesota. I don't think the Pelicans are really going to have an answer to him, and he's going to have a big game and really shoulder the load for Minnesota to get them that 8 seed.
Yeah, what I led with this one is the same thing you did. It's a very fun matchup. It's got a lot of potential. Both teams are able to score in bunches, and that's if the Pelicans are having a good day. We mentioned CJ McCollum, right? But they've also got guys like Brandon Ingram and Jonas Valanciunas. They all can score. And Valanciunas, as far as talent level, is kind of a light version of Cat. He can shoot threes. He can bang inside. Those two in that regular season series really went at it. And it's tied 2-2, I believe, in the regular season series. But Minnesota's got the depth. They're more healthy. There's quite a few Pelicans that are day-to-day. So, yeah, I think Cat's going to go crazy. Maybe even Anthony Edwards. But it's going to be a Karl Anthony Towns statement game, and he needs it.
So we both have the Timberwolves taking that 8 seed. So we have the same playoff matchups here in the West and East. We're going to start with the West. We're going to go all the way through the West. Then we'll take a quick commercial break, come back and do the East, and give our finals predictions as well. So let's start with the West. Let's start with the top seed, the Phoenix Suns. What a year they've had. They would be taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. And yeah, the Timberwolves, they're really good. But this Suns team, they just it almost feels like they have that chip on their shoulder from falling short in the finals last year. Devin Booker, my goodness, he's just taken his game to another level. It seems like every single season he just gets better and better. Chris Paul is going to do his thing. I was really impressed with DeAndre Ayton last season. He's gotten even better this year. They're just so deep, so balanced across the board, and they have their go-to guy with Booker.
Yeah, they've gotten even better. And Chris Paul, it was a really weird circumstantial thing, right, with the COVID illness, and then he wasn't quite the same since. He had a couple really good breakout games against the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals, but in those finals, he just kind of faltered where he had been excelling the whole series. Obviously a big X factor, but you're right. Ayton's gotten better. Devin Booker's ready. That Phoenix Suns team also, I think they're third best defensive team in the league and one of the best offensive, most complete scoring teams in the league. So yeah, unfortunately the Timberwolves, they may have been the number one scoring team during the regular season, but yeah, I think again, Ant and Cat are going to go nuts. But the Suns are just way too good. They might run them out of the gym. We'll see.
I think the Suns sweep that series, just roll right into the next round.
I do have Suns in 5, though. I will say that.
I do have
Suns
Minnesota.
in 5. I think Anthony's going to have a 50-piece. And that's I think Anthony Edwards is going to have a 50-piece.
We got a hot take there. Hot even. Wow.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So Suns moving on. This 4-5 matchup is so good. Dallas against Utah. Luka Doncic and Donovan Mitchell. That is going to be incredible to watch. My problem with the Mavs is it seems like every year we talk about this. They're in a tough matchup. They can play. They can score. But it always feels like they fall just short. In Utah, I think Rudy Gobert is going to turn out to be the X factor. His defensive presence down low, and he's taken his game even above and beyond offensively, it feels like this year. I just like Utah. I think it's a really close series. I have it going 7 actually, but I have Utah actually pulling it out. It would be on the road in Dallas. I just can't put too much faith in Dallas until I've actually seen them go in there and get the job done in the postseason.
I do want to give credit to the Mavs and what they've done this season. I mean, the number 4 seed in the West, that's crazy. And I would not, especially with their start, I would not have expected that. But the Porzingis trade for Dinwiddie, and I can't remember who the other one was, Bertans, I believe. That was a great trade that turned things around. Dinwiddie is revitalizing his career right now in Dallas, but Luka just suffered a calf strain. I don't know if you saw that in the final regular season game of the season. And then Donovan Mitchell also missed the last game of the season due to an unknown illness. This was one of my toughest picks, but I did say the Jazz in 6. I don't necessarily think Luka's going to be that hampered by injuries. He always puts on a crazy show. But the Jazz, again, are a more complete team. I think they're the best three-point shooting team in the league statistically. And Donovan Mitchell, lest we not forget, Matt, he is ridiculous in the playoffs. My mind goes back to that 2020 series against the Nuggets where they went 7. Him and Jamal Murray were trading 50 pieces. He had in that series, he scored 57, then 51, and 44. Luka will also have crazy numbers, probably some massive fat triple doubles. But Jazz are just more complete, man. That's what it comes down to.
That was my favorite playoff series ever, was the Nuggets and Jazz. Oh my goodness.
I can't wait till that Nuggets team gets Jamal back.
I know. Well, let's go and talk about the Nuggets because they play the 3rd seed, the Golden State Warriors. I'm going to start off by saying the Warriors being good at basketball is good for the NBA because they have that star power. They have Steph Curry. They have Klay Thompson, Draymond. They've got those guys. They also have some up-and-comers, Jordan Poole. I mean, they've got these guys that are coming up. It feels like they're reloading. They're starting to get the help around Steph and Klay. Klay's been a little hot and cold this year. I know he's loved by both of us. Murray being out for the Nuggets, I think, is what it comes down to. And I have the Warriors getting the job done in 6. Jokic is an absolute freak. Watching him go at Draymond down low is going to be pretty fun to watch. But no Murray, I think, turns out to be the X factor. And I know your boy, Michael Porter Jr., also having some injury issues as well. So losing a couple big pieces for the Nuggets, I just don't see them being able to knock off Golden State.
Yeah, I also have the Warriors in 6. Jokic is going to, I just mark my words, Jokic is going to get mind-blowing numbers. He is going to be putting up some unprecedented, never before seen stats. ESPN's going to go crazy, right? But they just don't have a complete playoff team without Jamal, without MPJ. They just don't have anyone to truly help the Joker, despite what's going to be some Herculean efforts. Golden State's been there before. Steph and Clay are here to remind everyone why they're 3-time champions. And something that an old friend from Centralia College said way back in the day during the Warriors in the playoffs was Clay's cape doesn't wrinkle. Clay's cape does not wrinkle in the playoffs. He never fails. I mean, he really is able to put on some crazy heroics. Steph is obviously always ridiculous too. He's only got a couple games where he's faltered. So yeah, the Warriors, they're the Golden State Warriors, and they're kind of back to basics. They don't have a third huge star like KD anymore, but they never needed him in the first place. So they're going to show him why we just need Steph, we need Clay, we need Draymond, and then just figure out another forward and throw a big center in the middle to play defense, and we got it. We got it covered.
I talked to Trev Elliott on Twitter, and we both agreed this season it feels like Steph reminded everyone just how good he is. I think everyone kind of forgot a little bit with the Warriors having some down years. He's still that guy in the NBA. So Warriors moving on there. This series is going to be very fun. The 2nd seed Memphis Grizzlies against the 8th seed Clippers. Ja Morant might be my favorite player not named Giannis or Chris Middleton to watch in the NBA. My goodness, he is just an absolute superstar. Actually played same AAU team as Zion coming out of college. Zion was getting all the talk. Ja Morant had a good tournament run with Murray State that got him a little bit more national attention. But since they got to the NBA, it's been the Ja Morant show. I think the Grizzlies get this one in 7. I think the Clippers are going to push them. Clippers have a little bit more playoff experience, but Ja Morant is just going to do his thing. I just don't know any way you can stop it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We're not having a ton of disagreements here, buddy. And even though I'm rocking all these Clippers gear, I've got the Grizzlies in 7. Ja Morant made me a complete believer last year. He just went toe to toe with the best of the best, and he's got a floater, and he's got just this game managing attitude and this dog in him that just never quits. I mean, he can score over the tallest defenders and post them up too. He's posting up 7-footers and throwing up fadeaway floaters, cashing them, going to the rim, drawing fouls, dunking, doing everything. He can shoot threes. He's gotten way better at that this season. And don't forget, I believe the Grizzlies also are number 2 ranked defense in the league. Clippers are number 8. I just think that Ja and all them are just gonna outdo a Clippers team that's missing Kawhi, and that's the only piece they're missing. I think that they reload next year and they make a run, and I think that they're the title contenders next year. But this year, Ja's he's gonna beat them in 7, and the Clippers it's gonna be Paul George versus Ja Morant, and Morant's gonna come out on top and have an early feather in his cap for a career that's gonna be amazing.
And I hope for your sake and for Clippers Nation's sake that does come true and the Clippers can go on a run next year. I know they've been pulling heartstrings forever. Let's go ahead and head to the Western Conference semis. We agreed on everything so far. So let's go to what would be the Suns and the Jazz. Again, a very fun playoff series. Suns in 5 for me. They just are on a whole nother level right now. I don't see anyone really slowing them down. It almost feels like they have to beat themselves, have an off night, fall behind in a series maybe, and that could be what trips them up. I don't see that happening against Utah.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I don't know if you're reading my notes or what, buddy, but I got Suns in 5. The Jazz are a very talented team, but historically they just can't get over the hump. I think that it's one of those things. It's kind of like how Damian Lillard is cursed of like playing in this era alongside Steph Curry, or else like he would be the guy that everyone would talk about. The Jazz are so talented, and they have been, but they're just surrounded by Western Conference teams that are really, really, really good. So, yeah, I don't see the Jazz getting over the hump, especially against a Suns team that's just ready. They're ready to go back to the finals and compete. So, yeah, Suns in 5.
I think that was the most dangerous thing about the Suns is they do have that chip from I think if they would have lost in like the Western Conference Finals last year, I don't think they're playing as angry as they are. But losing in the finals after being up 2-0, it just flipped a switch in them and they're ready to just run through everybody to get that championship. So again, we're still the same. Suns head to the Western Conference Finals. The Warriors and the Grizzlies, the next series. This one is going to be fireworks from the word go. I don't see it going that long, though. I have the Warriors in 5. I just think the experience, Steph Curry, he's going to score. If Klay Thompson's shooting lights out, they might be able to even sweep Memphis. I'm going to give Memphis 1 just because John Morant is going to have one of those games that just blows everyone away. But the experience of Golden State, a team that's been there, Jordan Poole doesn't have to shoulder the load like a John Morant does at that young of an age. I think the Warriors are just more experienced, and I think they're a little bit better than Memphis.
Warriors in 4. I think they get the sweep. Ja might be the shiny new hero, but Steph, Klay, and even Jordan Poole, they've been doing this, man. So, yeah, I think that they're ready for this run and that it's probably not going to be very close. I think they leave the Grizzlies in the dust in this one.
Well, that'll make for a very fun Western Conference Finals. Let's hop to it. The Suns and the Warriors. I just mentioned the only thing that could trip up the Suns maybe is getting off to a slow start. I think that might happen in this series, but I have the Suns winning it in 7. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, both are going to shoot lights out. I think they are going to come into this series looking to prove that the Warriors are still the team. They still can do it. They still can go on these runs. They're still the face of the NBA. I just think Devin Booker is, like I said, playing angry. I think he's going to play a lot smarter. The turnovers kind of hurt him in the finals a little bit last year. And I think Chris Paul is going to step up and clean things up a little bit more than he did in the finals last year. And I think DeAndre Ayton is going to really be an X factor for the Suns in that series. And I see them squeaking it out.
I think it's more definitive than that for the Suns. I think that it comes down to depth. I've got the Suns in 5. These are 2 of the best scoring teams, period. I mean, in the league for sure this year. The Suns are just better. Golden State Warriors aren't deep enough. And we talk about Devin Booker and Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, but we've also got Jay Crowder, you got Cam Payne, you've got a lot of guys that are coming off the bench and are also able to fill it up. And the Warriors just don't really have, unless you leave one of the Slash brothers out there for the bench minutes or have Jordan Poole out there. They just don't have the same depth. I think the Suns are the deepest team in the league. So it's really hard. I think that whether they put James Wiseman or Kevon Looney on DeAndre Ayton, I think Ayton's still going to eat. I think he's still feasting. It always seems like the Warriors just kind of put a center up there as a formality. I think James Wiseman's got potential to be a little different, but they just kind of throw a center in there as a formality and then let everything else, the spacing and all that offensively work out on its own with the Splash Bros. But yeah, the Suns are going to do it in 5, in my opinion. I do respect you're going. Did you say 7 there?
I said 7.
I mean, Steph and Klay are going to put up a fight. Don't get me wrong. But when the Suns get going, man, it's a track meet. And they just 1 through 8, 1 through 10, they can score in bunches.
So we both have the Suns getting back to the NBA Finals, looking to right the wrong from last season. All right, we're going to take a quick break, get some commercials in here. Let us have a little bit of a breather. And then we're talking Eastern Conference, where I think we're going to have a few differences. That's coming up next here on the Kingsmen.
Health Nutrition Center in Centralia is your home base for nutrition. When you visit Good Health Nutrition Center, you'll find the largest selection of vitamins, supplements, and natural remedies. You may be surprised to also find a huge selection of healthy groceries such as gluten-free products, environmentally friendly products, organic fruits and vegetables, and items for specific diets like the diabetic diet. Good Health Nutrition Center, powering students and athletes from the inside out. Good Health Nutrition Center on Harrison in Centralia.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen. It's time to break down the Eastern Conference playoffs, and we're going to hop right into with the Miami Heat. We both have them taking on the Atlanta Hawks in the first round. This Heat squad, they feel like the same Heat team from the bubble. They feel like they've got that swagger, that little bit of an edge to them. The Hawks are going to be a very tough matchup for them, though. I just think the Heat too physical. I see them getting it done in 5. I like what Miami has. I like Jimmy Butler playing with, we talked about that chip Devin Booker has. I think Jimmy Butler's got one similar, especially after just being really run out of the gym last season against the Bucks in the first round. And I think Miami's going to come in, they're going to put on a show and show everyone that this is a legit championship caliber team.
Right. No, I agree. I think that the Heat are Heat in 4. I don't think Trey's going to be able to compete with just, they have a ton of depth too. And you mentioned that they're that same team from the bubble. I think they're better than that team from the bubble. They have added some guys and have been super competitive all year long. But I'm still skeptical about the Heat in the long run as far as going for a title run. I just think that there's something about them that I can't get past. I think that the bubble was very circumstantial. They dealt with a lot of other teams that had injuries. I'll get into that later on once we can do those predictions. But I think the Heat are going to have no problem with the Atlanta Hawks in that first round.
So Heat moving on.
I do remember now. Oladipo is back.
Victor Oladipo.
I mean, Tyler Hero's been going off too, and they got guys like Strus and them, but Oladipo, did you see that he dropped 40 points a couple nights ago in the season finale?
You could tell me Victor Oladipo does anything from, hey, he laid a goose egg to he scored 60, and I believe it all. It seems like he's that kind of guy.
They did rest a lot of the Heat players for that season finale, but Oladipo, who just got back, I mean, we haven't heard from him in forever, and now he's all of a sudden this huge wild card and X factor for Miami. So you never know how many minutes they're going to give him or what's going to happen, but man, they've got a ton of ballers on that team.
And that bench is just ridiculous when you look at the guys who aren't even starting. It's special. This 4-5 matchup, Philly and Toronto, I think is going to be really good. I'm a big fan of Siakam. I love him. I was able to watch him in person in his breakout year when they went to Portland. Fred VanVleet went off that night as well. That, I think, got him a lot of attention that he hadn't really seen since he left Wichita State. He's kind of been pretty quiet. This team's got a lot of potential. And against the Philly team that it seems like always falls a little bit flat, I think that James Harden pickup is going to be what gets them over the edge in this series. I like Philly in 6. Joel Embiid is just, once again, having another MVP caliber season. I think it's him or Jokic this year that takes that home. I like Philly to get the job done in 6.
And congratulations to Embiid on getting that scoring title too. Wrestled it away from LeBron. I also have the Sixers in 6. At first I wanted to kind of discount the Raptors because besides the Kawhi season, they tend to falter in the playoffs as well. LeBron owning that DeMar Kyle Lowry team comes to mind, but Toronto is complete. They're well coached. Nick Nurse is a really good coach. They just don't have the star power or the half court play that the 76ers do. And a lot of times that's what the playoffs come down to, is when everything slows down, you're not able to get out in transition. Everyone's playing really tight defense. What can you do in the half court and go to your stars to score? So I think that's where Philadelphia is going to take this. And I do give the Toronto Raptors a couple games only because I think both Harden and Embiid are going to struggle with adjusting to the tightening up of the officiating in the playoffs. I mean, they both are very used to getting a lot of foul calls. They shoot a ton of free throws, always, this season especially. And they're not going to get as many calls, especially when James takes some bad shots, some bad shot selection, hoping to get a foul call. That seems to be something he has to endure in the playoffs every year. So we'll see that there, and I think Toronto's going to get a couple games out of it, but Sixers will push through.
So Sixers moving on. Again, I'm glad Embiid wrestled that scoring title away.
Yeah.
LeBron, I mean, he was the only one on that Lakers team who could really score. So I think that kind of boosted his numbers a little bit.
Oh,
But,
dude, give it. He's in what, year 18 or
yeah.
19? Give him more credit, man.
I'm
on.
I'm a LeBron. I think LeBron's the GOAT, but that team was so bad this year that just give LeBron the ball and he's going to find a way to score. That was the Lakers game plan, it felt like.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's move on to my 3-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, the reigning champions. They're taking on the 6-seed Chicago Bulls. I was actually stoked that the Bucks lost on Sunday, dropping them down to the 3-seed to avoid Brooklyn at all costs for the first round and giving them this matchup against Chicago where they really dominated the regular season series. And I think they dominate this series. I think it's a 4-0 Milwaukee. I love the Bulls. I think they are on the right track. Give them 3 years. I think they're looking at a 2-seed, maybe even a 1-seed coming up. But this Bucks team, I think, is the most dominant team in the East. I think they're the face of the Eastern Conference right now. And I think they are the team to beat. I mean, to beat the man, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Right now, the Bucks and Giannis are the man. I knew you'd get that one. I absolutely love it. I think the Bucks are Ric Flair, and Ric Flair runs through this one. Bucks in 4.
Yeah. I actually have Bucks in 5. And the only reason, well, first of all, I love that you mentioned that you're happy the Bucks lost that game because they certainly tried, didn't they?
Absolutely.
I mean, they had Holiday,
that was
nobody.
Amazing.
They had nobody playing that was notable besides Drew Holiday.
8 seconds and get out.
Yeah. So yeah, what they have. I looked at the injury report for the Bucks. This is the only reason I give the Bulls a game. They've got Grayson Allen, Giannis, George Hill, Serge Ibaka, Chris Middleton, and Bobby Portis. They are all day-to-day and missed the last game of the season. I'm sure a lot of that was just a formality or a precaution, but I think the Bulls will squeak one out. However, the Bulls, they've been super entertaining, one of the best surprises of the season. Their record against top teams is awful. Awful. As of April 6th, they had a record of 2-20 against playoff caliber teams this season. 2-20. So again, and I don't want to cast shade on DeMar DeRozan because he has had a ridiculous year. But in the postseason, it seems like every time DeMar just can't quite get it done. Now he's had some ridiculous matchups that he's faced, but again, I don't think that they're going to be able to do much against this Bucks squad that is I mean, not necessarily better than last year, but they're really darn close. And I can tell you, Giannis Antetokounmpo is better than last year. So
yeah, you want to talk about a ridiculous, and he's going to finish probably 3rd in the MVP race. That tells you how good Embiid and Jokic were this year. So Bucks roll in that series against an up and coming Bulls team that'll be back in the playoffs for sure. Now the most interesting series of the first round in the East, I think, 2nd seed Boston taking on the 7th seed Brooklyn Nets. The Nets are going to be the favorite in that series if they beat Cleveland here in the play-in, which we both had them doing. Brooklyn, Kevin Durant, I think, is the reason that everyone loves Brooklyn so much. You take Kevin Durant off that team, nobody's going to have them beating Boston. I think Kyrie's unbelievable. He's been great. I think the Nets get the job done here in 5. I like Boston a lot. I like the piece that they have, but Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, if they are playing both even 75% of what they've done when they're on the court together this season, good luck figuring out a way to stop them. I think the Nets really take control of this series early.
I have the Nets in 6, and I'm trying really hard. I kind of fought myself back and forth on this one a bit because I'm trying not to be a prisoner of the moment, right? And the Nets have just kind of been wild. They have a lot of similarities to the Lakers in that they have a ton of old vets on that team. But they've also got guys. They got Andre Drummond for a steal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think that they were looking for that big guy in the middle that can get rebounds and be an interior defender. I said in a show that I filmed here at WSU a couple months ago that they finally got their Giannis stopper. I know that might trigger you a little bit, but the Boston Celtics, I think the biggest thing with Robert Williams, they were the number 1 defense in the league. They do not have Robert Williams. He's done. He's not playing at all this postseason. Tice, he's serviceable, but he's not going to rebound Andre Drummond. and some of the other bigs on Brooklyn. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are averaging just under 52 points per game combined, which is insane. However, Kyrie and KD are averaging 57. So yeah, Boston was the best defensive team this season, but that was with Williams. And again, this is Kyrie and KD at full power, two of the best scorers on this flat earth. I mean, on this earth.
Oh,
little Kyrie joke there. I don't truly believe
jab.
that, but yeah, I think that the Nets going to take it. We could be wrong though, because Jason Tatum is really, really good in the playoffs. Really good.
I love Jason Tatum. I think he's gonna be the face of the him, and I can't wait. I hope so much that we get to see one day Devin Booker lead the Suns against Jason Tatum and the Celtics in the NBA Finals. You want to talk about what would be an electric matchup right there? Take all my money. I put it on pay-per-view. I'll still buy every single game. It'd be amazing.
You're darn right, buddy.
Eastern Conference semis. We got Heat 76ers. And this might be where we veer off a little bit. I've got the Sixers getting the job done in 6. Joel Embiid, with how he's played this year, there's just something different about it. And I talked about this with Dallas. Until the team's actually done it, I'm very hesitant. But I'm buying in on the Sixers squad. I think they are really, really good this year. James Harden, I'll put it out there. I'm not a James Harden fan, but man, he can score the basketball. So talented. The Sixers, they can shoot the 3 ball pretty well. They can pound it down low with Joel Embiid. I think it's going to be tough for Miami to keep up with them offensively. If Miami can slow them down with that defense, I think Miami might be able to pull it out. I just don't see that happening, or I'm less confident in that happening than I am than Joel Embiid just taking over this series.
Well, and as good as Bam Adebayo is on defense, he's undersized. And I think Joel Embiid might be able to feast on that. So I feel you there, but you're right. This is where we veer off. I say the Miami Heat in 7 games. I think that they eventually get it done. And I think that Embiid and Harden, once again, just aren't going to get some of the calls that they want. I think there's going to be some really dramatic moments and pivotal moments where at least James Harden might falter. So, yeah, I think the Heat are a lot more complete. I think that Tobias Harris is obviously going to be a really big question mark too. He's never quite panned out for that Sixers team like they thought he would. They thought he'd be a really good number 3 piece and they'd have a 3-headed monster. But barring him going off, I think the Heat are still going to get it in 7, though. It's going to be one of, if not the most competitive series that we see in the playoffs, in my opinion.
It's going to be a fight regardless who wins. That is a phenomenal series. So finally, we have a difference. We aren't just copying each other. Let's move on.
Great minds think alike, buddy. What do you do?
Or ours, whatever you want to call our minds.
Mediocre minds. Yeah.
Average. Yeah. We're both out there. That's for sure. Let's move on to our other Eastern semi, the Bucks and the Nets. And Luke, my Bucks, they pulled one out by a half of a shoe length over the Nets last season in that epic Game 7. This year, I think things are going to be different with how the series plays out, because I think it doesn't go to 7. I like the Bucks in 6 to knock out the Nets.
You had me hanging on a thread, dude.
Reel them in.
I legitimately thought you might pick against the Bucks, but I should have known better. I picked the Nets in 7, and that was a tough call to come to. But I think that KD and Kyrie at full strength, again, and this is barring injury, because it very easily could happen. Both have been known to get injured in the playoffs. So I think barring injury at full health, they are just a problem. And I think Chris Middleton I don't think he's quite as good this year as he was last year. And I think that Drummond is going to give Giannis a little bit more trouble, especially, certainly more trouble than Nick Claxton gave him last year. So I think that that's going to be a little bit different. They've got some other pieces. I know Drummond hasn't been getting, I think he's averaging like 23, 24 minutes a game. So he's going to get more usage. They're really going to try to limit what Giannis can do. And it's going to be on guys like Middleton and Holiday and Allen to step up. But I think that that's also going to be a really drag out series full of drama. But and I might kick myself for this. I might eat my words big time, but I think the Nets are going to do it in 7.
The reason I give the slight edge to the Bucks is because I think their bench is deeper this year. I think Serge Ibaka is going to be good to go by that series, because I don't know if they try and make him do or force him onto the court too much against the Bulls, because I don't think they necessarily need him on the court to win that series. Also, they've got Pat Connaughton coming off the bench.
Yes.
He can light it up as well. He's been insane. And last season, Chris Middleton just failed a gear in the playoffs when Giannis couldn't get things going. All of a sudden, Chris Middleton couldn't miss. If it's not for Middleton, I don't think the Bucks beat the Hawks. In fact, I know the Bucks don't beat the Hawks if it's not for Chris Middleton. And I think Drew Holiday's taking a step up. Can he carry that over into the playoffs? I think he's been better in the regular season this year than he was last season. In the playoffs, though, it's different because he slowed down a little bit until those last couple of games in the finals against the Suns. I think he's going to really give Kyrie some issues that we keep talking about, that dog mentality. Drew Holiday's got that. And I think he's going to throw that at Kyrie Irving and throw Kyrie off his game a little bit. I just think the Bucks get the slight edge in 6.
I love that matchup, by the way, of Drew versus Kyrie.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think they throw Giannis on KD?
I do. I really do. And I think they should. Giannis, I think, is the defensive player of the year this year. I think him against KD, I think KD's going to score. That there's not a question.
Right.
Can you keep KD in check enough to force guys like a Kyrie Irving to really ball out to get the Nets those points? And I don't think Kyrie's going to be able to necessarily ball out. Again, another guy who's going to get his points, but I don't think he's going to be able to drop those 50, 60-point games against Drew Holiday like he'd like to. And I think Drew Holiday, if he can step up and score in that series, it might not even go to 6 games. I think Chris is going to score. If Chris can shoot, I just don't see the Bucks slowing down.
I agree. Yeah. If everyone can score and kind of match that output, I agree with you. Drew Holiday, by the way, he never, ever gets enough love. I think he's one of the coolest stories in the NBA by far. He was with the Pelicans and then took a hiatus. His wife was diagnosed with cancer and then took a hiatus to take care of her and the family, then came back and is now balling out. He's a champion. Anyway, I love Drew Holiday as a person and as a player, but you're right. That could very well go either way. I think it's really a coin toss. And I think the defense of the Bucks is going to be huge going forward. But I think Drummond is going to do more to keep Giannis in check. And I think KD is KD's going to get his, and he can get his at all 3 levels of scoring. So
that series could literally go any way, and I believe that's going to be a fun series. So we finally are very different here in the Eastern Conference Finals. You've got the Heat against the Nets. I've got the Sixers and Bucks. I think the Bucks knock off the Sixers in 6. Bucks in 6 was the motto last season. I think they do it again. Again, Giannis, what he can do on both ends of the court, just not many guys can do. And like you said, he stepped up. He dropped a 50-piece to win the NBA Finals last year. Nobody else did anything in that game besides really Giannis. He's a special player. And I think Chris Middleton is going to light that spark in the playoffs like he did last year out of nowhere. He's done it his entire career, really. And I just think they really roll into the finals, knocking off the 76ers. For me, a rematch with the Suns in the NBA Finals. Let's hear your thoughts on the Heat and Nets.
Well, I will say, before I do my Heat and Nets, if I were to pick yours, I would say the Bucks in 4 or 5 against the Sixers. I think that the Bucks are just a way more complete team than Philadelphia, and I think that I don't know if Embiid and Harden would necessarily stand a chance as long as the Bucks were bringing it full strength. Now for my Miami Heat versus the Brooklyn Nets, I don't know if this is a hot take. I mean, the way we've been talking, it doesn't seem like a hot take, but when I typed it out, it felt like a hot take. The Nets in 5 against Miami Heat. I might catch flack. The Heat are complete, right? I still don't believe in them on the biggest stage. I still don't believe in them. I don't think they can win a title as they are. The Nets are chock full of vets that have been there. They've won titles. They have 2 of the greatest scorers, as I said, on our great flat earth. They are
the round one.
Yeah, or the round one, whichever one you choose, whatever you prefer.
They're good on both.
Whether you like facts or falsehoods, you know. I think the Nets are going to take that in 5. The Heat they just Bam Adebayo for 1. He's a great defender, but he's just undersized, and that does cost him. And that's their anchor. So yeah, I think the Nets star power is going to shine through. And this could be wishful thinking. I don't know if it's wishful, but I could be out of my depth, I suppose. But I think that the Nets are going to go to the finals.
So you've got Nets, Suns. I've got Bucks, Suns. We're not really going to waste any time. I agree with you, by the way. I think the Nets would win that series with Miami. I think Kyrie and KD just too good. They're going to score. I don't think that he really have the defensive pieces to really even slow them down. I think they'd roll in that series. Let's just go right into our finals predictions. I think I'll start with the Suns and the Bucks.
Rematch.
Here's where your wish of me picking against the Bucks comes true, because I think the Suns get the job done in 7 games. I think home court advantage is going to be a big factor, which the Suns have. And I think Devin Booker isn't going to let that happen again. He's not going to let the Bucks beat him twice. I think Giannis is going to go off like he always does. You talked about the depth of the Suns. It is unbelievable how deep they are, how balanced they are. DeAndre Ayton just keeps getting better and better. And a lot of people forget Suns were up 2-0 in that series. They started off really good before Chris Paul kind of fell apart out of nowhere for really no one really knew what was going on. But I don't think that happens again. I think Chris Paul brings his A game, and I don't think he has to do nearly as much this season with the supporting cast now that he has around him.
I agree. And I think that the only excuse I can come up with for last year was the COVID thing. He just wasn't quite right. He did have some moments after he came back from COVID where he was still elite, but he just did not, those shots that he literally was automatic from like the right elbow all playoffs long, he just wasn't hitting all of a sudden. I don't think that happens this year. So my finals take what Brooklyn Nets versus the Phoenix Suns. I've got the Suns in 6. The Suns will finally do it. Chris Paul will finally get his ring. And I don't know if you know, this isn't a Chris Paul jersey. It's a Blake Griffin jersey, but I was a Clippers fan back in 09-10 when they were truly Lob City. And I've been wanting to see Chris Paul win a ring for over a decade. So I think that he's going to do it. They're the most complete team on both ends. They have the star power to back it up. And KD and Kyrie just won't be able to compensate for that. They just won't. But they will put up a fight in 6.
I think the Suns beat whoever you put in front of them from any conference. I think they are the best team in basketball. And I'm glad you're rooting for Chris Paul, almost like a Lions rooting for Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl.
Precisely like that.
I'm not going to call the Clippers the Lions, though.
They're not poverty, but they're close.
I think, yeah, they're close, but at least they get into the playoffs, unlike the poor Lions. So we both have the Suns winning the title, getting a little bit of revenge, or finishing off the journey that they started last season to win the NBA championship. Luke, thank you so much for joining us for this playoff prediction. We'll maybe have you on next week to get a little recap of what has happened in the playoffs already. That'll be a weekly thing here on the Kingsmen. Luke, we always appreciate you so much.
Well, now I'm scared that you're going to hold me accountable for all these takes, but man, it's Matt, it's been an absolute honor. I've loved doing this with you, and I'm always willing to talk basketball. You know that. So thanks so much for having me on.
All right. That is going to do it for our NBA predictions. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jacob will be on. We'll talk about the NFL offseason and the first weekend of baseball. We both blew things way out of proportion that went on. We got overreactions. That's coming up next year on the Kingsmen.
Cheap insurance is nice, but none of that matters if your insurance company isn't there when you need them most. When you are looking for a trusted insurance company, well, it's our name, Clear Choice Insurance. We represent multiple companies to get you the best possible price and coverage for home, car, and business plans. The Clear Choice Pros will craft the perfect plan to fit your needs and budget. Check us out at clearchoiceinsurance.us. Make the clear choice with Clear Choice Insurance.
Pacific Mobile Structures are big supporters of kids and athletics. If you are in need of temporary office space on a work site or for overflow space, or if your building is in need of major renovation, Pacific Mobile Structures can keep your company at work. Pacific Mobile Structures offers everything from traditional modular classroom space to complete multi-purpose college campus buildings, including Sage Classrooms, which combine the latest in healthy learning environments with the best in green building practices. Pacific Mobile Structures can also offer you permanent space for a fraction of the cost to build your own. Go online to check out Pacific Mobile Structures.
All right, welcome back to the Kingsmen, and now joining alongside me, Jacob, back from last week. You know, it was a fun weekend of baseball. We're going to get to baseball here in a little bit, but
Yes.
it's just so glad to have it back. It's been a blast.
Yes. I was worried there for a little bit. So
Mariners are able to at least split the series, but hey, we're back. We're actually going to start with football today. There's been a lot of moves. This might be the most entertaining offseason NFL-wise, maybe ever, if not in a
pre-draft,
long time.
yes.
Absolutely. Just absolute chaos. So we're actually going to give you guys our top 3 offseason moves or non-moves, because there were a couple of guys who we thought might be on the move that are actually staying put. So do you want to go ahead and give your top 3 first real quick, Jacob?
We can go like one and then the other if that works.
Yep. Perfect.
So my third biggest was the Bills defensive signings. One of, if not the top defense of last year, just completely beefed up their defensive line. And so I think that they really need to focus on corners here in the next coming weeks and months. And there's a few guys I think they have their eye on in the draft, but I mean, Von Miller just adds that next level to their pass rushing. I think that they're going to do great things this year.
And that's what fell apart in that divisional loss to Kansas City. I mean, They had that game in the bag and just could not come up with a stop. Otherwise, they would have been playing for the AFC Championship, and I really liked them to beat Cincinnati. And they could have beat the Rams very well in the Super Bowl as well. So that defense might have cost them a ring. They've got a lot of good pieces with White. You also have Micah Hyde and Poyer, Tremaine Edmonds. And I really like Von Miller adding there. Hopefully going to give quarterbacks a little bit of an issue. My number 3 is with Cleveland, not just Deshaun Watson, but also Amari Cooper. That's a lot of changes for the Browns. I'm a Baker Mayfield fan. He was playing hurt last season. I don't know if he'll ever be as good as Deshaun Watson, so I understand the move. The Amari Cooper one, I think, is really one that sets apart how Cleveland is really going for it, because they had Odell Beckham and they had Jarvis Landry. Both those guys are gone. They needed a number 1, and to go out and get Amari Cooper, who I don't think anyone really expected to be available from Dallas, that's a big get for Cleveland in a very, very tough division.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I was a little muffed at how Cleveland treated Baker through this whole process, but you can't argue with the results. They are a better team, a better offense this year, and those moves really did help out a lot with that.
All right, I'll go ahead and give my number 2. It involves my favorite team, the Green Bay Packers. A really stunning move, trading Davante Adams to the Raiders, and the Raiders also bringing in Chandler Jones. That AFC West is just stacked. I don't think there's going to be much of a question that the Raiders would be number 3 or 4, depending on if you buy the hype that is the Broncos roster. Now they're going to be right in it. They're going to be contenders. This was a playoff team last year. They came close to beating Cincinnati Super Wild Card weekend. Chandler Jones is still a monster at pass rush to go alongside Max Crosby. This defense is on the up and up. I'm a fan of Derek Carr. He's not going to blow you away with numbers, but he plays pretty smart football. He knows the game, and now he's got his college wide receiver back with Davante Adams, the best receiver in the league, along with some other pieces, Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. This passing attack is going to be very good. That's going to take a lot of pressure off of Josh Jacobs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek Carr, I still think, is underrated. I know he's not producing quite as much, but his mind is in the game. He was actually one that I was hoping the Colts would go after this offseason. And I think that he was available until I saw some of the moves that the Raiders were making. I think Davante Adams has been my number 1 pick in fantasy the last 3 or 4 years in a row. You just can't go wrong with the guy. If there is an arm throwing to him, he's going to catch 10 plus a game. He's one of the biggest difference makers in football.
And I will also add, a lot of people were talking about, oh, well, if Rodgers leaves, what's that mean with Devontae? Can he have the chemistry? He's played with his college quarterback. I don't think there's any question about chemistry. They lit it up at Fresno State. They know each other pretty well.
Right. Absolutely. Kind of took the wind out of the Packers' lungs, re-signing their quarterback, using all of that money, and then losing the wide receiver that really was a huge part of that duo.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be tough to replace those numbers if you even can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers might bring back Randall Cobb, or let's go back even further, huh?
Jordy Nelson. I'm sure James Jones would love to break out the hoodie and come back and play. You never know.
Absolutely. My number 2, I called it the Tom Brady hokey pokey. I really you said non-moves, and that was a huge non-move. Without Tom Brady, they're not going to the playoffs. With Tom Brady, you can't ever count him out. So
Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, absolutely. So not really much more to say other than the freak is back. The memes were amazing.
And I will say that I thought about both Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers being put on my list. I didn't put either of them on. If I did, I would have put Rodgers ahead, just because there really was a lot of question. Tom Brady was either he's retiring or he's coming back to Tampa, which, again, big move, him staying put. I just thought in the end, if you take away, the whole retirement thing, nothing really changed. The new head coach did change. That surprised me.
Yeah. I don't know. It was very surprising to see that. So,
and let's talk about, you and I both have pretty much the exact same number 1 move. It's Russell Wilson to the Broncos.
Everyone in the country, that is the move that they talk about when they're talking about this offseason. What, you go ahead and go first if you want.
So when I look at what the biggest moves are, it's how does it affect each team? It has a big effect on both the Broncos and Seahawks. I'm not ready to buy in on all the hype that is this Broncos roster. You got to prove it to me. You got to go out and get some wins. And in that division, that is still going to be very, very tough. Luckily, they struggled last year. They're playing a last place schedule, so they can ease into it. New head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. He was the Packers offensive coordinator. He's very smart. Aaron Rodgers couldn't say enough good about him. So I think having Russ is going to help him kind of develop his offense a little bit quicker than most head coaches take.
Definitely.
But then for Seattle, that is just a big loss. And a lot of people are still saying they're not going into a rebuild, which I don't think they've really committed to a full scale rebuild yet, but they're definitely taking a step back. You don't trade your franchise quarterback and expect to just keep up that level of production in another very strong division. I think we're going to learn a little bit more about the Seahawks this season. If they can at least be competitive, then I think we see them just go for it. Maybe get a new quarterback to replace Russ, a higher end quarterback. If it doesn't work out, I think we see Pete Carroll leave. I'd be surprised if DK Metcalf stays. I'm surprised that Tyler Lockett already hasn't been traded. I think the Seahawks are going in for a rebuild, and I think the golden era of Seattle football might well be over.
Bodes well for Mariner fans, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of went over the same mindset. Denver pluses, they get an excellent quarterback, very mobile, can mold their offense into what it's going to be over the next few years. Not to mention, they get a city champion. Russell is already linking up with all of the Denver hospitals, the charities, the niceties. They're getting a guy who wants to connect with his city. Haven't seen that since, well, I mean, John Elway's good, Manning's good, Tim Tebow. They have a history of that type of quarterback that connects with their fan base, and I'm expecting that to go again. Not to mention, after this trade, Judy is now a top 20 wide receiver. Might even break top 15 if he stays healthy this year.
Cortland Sutton as well is going to see his value bump up quite a bit.
Absolutely. Then you go over to the Seattle side. Russell Wilson was done in Seattle. I don't care if you blame Pete Carroll and that offense that he was building, or just the lack of vision by the upper management and not getting him protection that he needed, not getting a defense that could compete with the rest of the league. But Russell Wilson has been frustrated. He was done in Seattle. You take a player that has a couple years left with you, they got the absolute most they could out of Russell Wilson. They got 5 draft picks, 2 first rounders, 2 second rounders, and a 5th. Offset the 5th with the 4th that they gave up. That's still a lot of draft power that can make an amazing team over the next few years. They got Noah Fant and Shelby Harris, which their defensive line is slowly becoming decent.
I think Shelby Harris was the guy they were really going after in that trade. Noah Fant, he's a good tight end. Seattle had some good tight ends. Gerald Everett put up a solid season last year, didn't do anything too special. Will Dissly has always been consistent. But I think Harris was the guy that made that trade happen.
Yeah. Well, and just the bunch of picks. That's huge. And then, they got Drew Lock, which will do for a little while until they figure out what they want to do. Drew Lock is not the guy. Pete Carroll says he's the guy. Pete Carroll says Drew Lock is going to take them to a championship. I think he's crazy. I think he's nuts. And I agree with you. I don't think that he's going to be there in the next. I think by the end of this year, at most end of next year, Pete Carroll will be gone.
I like Drew Lock coming out of Missouri. Coming out of college, I was a Drew Lock guy. I'm rooting for him. I like his energy. He just doesn't have it. But he had a lot of pressure on him with Denver. He had to be the guy. Seattle, I think they're going to go with a much more run-heavy offense.
Right.
Rashad Penny had a great second half of the season last year. Phenomenal. If he can replicate that, all the pressure's off of Drew Lock. I think it's more of a game manager situation in Seattle, what compared to in Denver, where it was him who had to try and carry the Broncos offense.
Right, exactly. And so it is not the Seahawks year. It will not be the Seahawks year, honestly, until LA burns themselves out. Seattle Seahawks are just wishing that there was a luxury tax in football right now.
I think a lot of the NFC is wishing for that. But that being said, I'm not so sure it's the Broncos year yet. Again, I think we need to see this talent. We need to see what everyone keeps saying about this roster, how loaded they are in that division. I see 3rd place at best for the Broncos.
It is rough in that division, but I could see them sneaking into 2nd in a wild card.
Still a lot more offseason go, draft coming up. That is going to do it for our NFL segment. We are going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to got some overreactions to the first, 4 games of baseball season. We'll talk about those coming up on the Kingsmen.
Alderson's Awards West Printwares is your one stop to tell the world about your school, club, or business. Spread the word on jackets, shirts, hats, and more from Awards West Printwares in Centralia. Awards West Printwares offers fast service of quality products including screen printing and embroidery done on site. They offer a wide variety of advertising specialties at great prices and delivered right to your door. For a full catalog, go online to aldersons.net. For maximum impact, Aldersons Awards West Printwares is ready to serve you today. If you have suffered a personal injury that wasn't your fault, the attorneys at Rogers, Key, Card, and Strophe work hard to get you a fair settlement. Managing partner Scott Key spearheads the personal injury practice that features decades of experienced attorneys to represent you with a proven history of successful verdicts and settlements. You can find them at budbaylaw.com to schedule a free consultation with Scott Key.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen episode 2. I am here with Jacob Sullivan. Now it is time to talk some baseball. A little bit of a wild weekend, some surprises, some just feeling out, I guess, getting guys loose. We didn't see very many pitchers go deep into ball games, which I don't think is a surprise that shortened spring.
Other than Robbie Ray, but
Robbie Ray, 7 innings. Love that. That was great for them. Mariners. We do have a couple of overreactions, one from each league. Let's start with the NL, where we're both kind of on similar pages involving the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, remember, these are overreactions. We're not saying anything that we say here will come true. We're saying what it looks like right now. We're going to try and say some shock factor things here. That very well could happen based on what we saw the first weekend of the season.
Yeah, the Dodgers are in trouble. They played the Rockies. They played in Colorado. They played 27 innings of baseball. They were shut out for 23 of them. That is not a good look for this payroll, for this lineup. That is worrisome, overreaction or not.
Yeah, and against the Rockies rotation, there's a lot of question marks about. I do like German Marquez. I think he's an absolute stud. I'm surprised they didn't move him. We'll see if he's still a Rocky next season. But yeah, my overreaction is the Dodgers aren't winning the division. With the way some of those teams look, the Rockies looked really good. They are a team I don't think you're going to be able to sleep on. Forget about the Diamondbacks. They are who we thought they were. The Giants, their pitching rotation and bullpen looked pretty solid. The bats struggled a little bit, but the pitching was great, just like last year. And the Padres looked phenomenal. It was against Arizona. It should have been a 4-game sweep if it wasn't for Seth Beer. That Padres team is who we were expecting to see last season, and they still don't have Fernando Tatis. That lineup is very good. Luke Voit played phenomenal. The Dodgers are going to have some more competition in that division than I think anyone really expected coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's hop on over to the American League. My overreaction is we talked about these rookies coming in, Bobby Witt Jr., Julio Rodriguez, Spencer Torkelson, Adley Rutschman, when he does get called up to Baltimore. My overreaction is none of those guys are going to win Rookie of the Year, because there were some absolute studs playing baseball that were rookies over the weekend. Jeremy Pena was sensational for Houston after he got things going, but Stephen Kwan for Cleveland did not swing and miss in an entire 4-game series with the Royals. He hit, I believe it was over 700 in that series. Are you kidding me? That is a guy who came in with no pressure playing for Cleveland because nobody expects him to do much this year. And he looked like a superstar. It was unbelievable. I watched a couple of the games in that series, and he just looked cool, calm, and collected. It was an unbelievable start to his career. This Rookie of the Year race in the American League goes way deeper than just the surface. It's going to be a blast to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of blasts to watch, the Blue Jays. That's my overreaction. Their only problem facing their offense is their pitching. I think that the Blue Jays are going to go for most runs scored and most runs scored against.
That's very well maybe true. That Rangers lineup is pretty solid. The pitching struggle, Blue Jays just shelled them. And then last night against the Yankees, remember, we're recording this on Tuesday. Last night against the Yankees, they shut them out 3-0. George Springer was great. This Blue Jays team can play with everyone. That offense is going to score. But yeah,
they're going to get scored.
The pitching around the league was a little rough this weekend, so I'm going to hold back on that a little bit.
Hold on. We're talking overreactions here. Come on.
We are talking about overreactions, but as a league-wide, the pitching was just off. We'll see if the Blue Jays can bounce back because they're relying on some guys who have had up and down careers. So like you said, maybe it's nothing, but it might just be something. And like you said, they might be pushing for a positive run differential because of that pitching staff struggling so much. And the bullpen was not very good at all.
Right. Absolutely. Do you think that the pitching struggles might be the new balls coming in and everybody getting used to them? What do you think is going on?
I think it's guys didn't really have time to work out some kinks in spring training. Shortened spring training, they didn't get as many innings in. They didn't get to work on things. They just had to build up those arm strengths, which still aren't there. I think it's going to be about May when I think we start seeing guys pitching like we're used to seeing them pitching. And then I think we'll be able to take a hard look and start worrying with some pitchers.
See, that surprises me because your offense is harder to develop on your own than pitching. I mean, obviously it's going to be different as you're facing higher caliber guys in spring training in those actual high intensity situations. But when the lockout was going on, pitchers throwing the ball to me have an edge over batters swinging and working out in the weight room.
Based on the interviews that I watched in spring, when you talk to a position player, they say 2 weeks and they're good to go. They're tired of just standing in there in meaningless games. They're ready to rock and roll, take the field. While pitchers, they need that whole month. They need to build that arm strength back up because, they're throwing the ball a little bit in the winter. They're trying to give those arms a break, though. If you don't give that arm a break in the winter, you're gonna have some
360-day season.
It's a big problem. In today's game, you don't see pitchers go that long in any sort of game, whether it be spring or regular season, but you got to get that arm some break, some rest, I guess I should say. And I think that month is very, very valuable to pitchers. I think that is something they're already missing.
That makes sense. Yeah. I didn't see many pitchers go over 80, 85 pitches. So it's different this year for sure.
All right. We're going to close this out with a segment that was an article last year. I did a weekly power ranking Kings ranks that won't come out until next week. I didn't want to write an entire article based on 4 games, but I do have my top 10 and we're going to have Jacob react to them. Again, this will be an article that's posted weekly on EliSportsNetwork.com. We'll link that as well. My top 10, here we go. We're going to get Jacob's reactions as well. We'll start at the top. Number 1, the Toronto Blue Jays.
I like it. I mean, they were my AL champion this year in the predictions, so I'm liking it so far.
Number 2, I've got the Houston Astros. Looked real good against the Angels. Justin Verlander looked pretty solid in his return as well.
Yeah, I hate it, but I agree with it. You think that Verlander has to slow down at some point, but he just keeps going, and that offense just keeps scoring.
Number 3, I'm going to go with the Padres. Again, they had 2 starters through 6 no-hit innings, I believe, each to start out the season. That rotation looked solid. The bats were coming alive. Snell did have a little bit of an injury issue that pushed back his start, so we'll see how serious that is, but they looked really good against Arizona. Number 4, I've got Tampa Bay. They went undefeated. They lost last night, just got smoked by the Oakland Athletics. The sweep over Baltimore was very good. The pitching looked good. They hit the ball. Wander Franco is an absolute superstar. So I liked what I saw from the Rays. Number 5, I've got the New York Mets. This one I'm a little worried about because they do have a couple of pitchers already dealing with some issues with DeGrom. They had to pull Taijuan Walker early last night, and then they also had to pull Trevor May early with an injury last night. So we'll see. Max Scherzer's not 100%. He looked good in his debut. I'm a little worried about the rotation and pitching already.
Not to mention Diaz is out of country for bereavement right now. They're hurting for arms.
Absolutely. Number 6, I have the Yankees. They took that big series with Boston, looked good. Giancarlo Stanton was hitting the ball all over the place. He looked like an MVP. They lost last night to the Blue Jays. I'm not going to hold that against them too much. I do want to see Josh Donaldson hit a little bit better and Aaron Judge. That would boost them up. Number 7, I've got the Chicago White Sox. Again, the pitching a little bit of an issue. Giolito already, it looks like, going on the IL along with Lance Lynn. That's concerning, but the bats are going to keep them in games. They can at least still go above 500, continue to take series while those guys are recovering.
And keep in mind, we are recording this Tuesday before the Mariners just kicked the snot out of them. So
by the time you're seeing this, the Mariners probably have swept. The White Sox are going for the sweep. So, but keep that in mind. At number 8 is where I have my surprise team, the Philadelphia Phillies. They played pretty well in their season opening series against Oakland. Looked good. Had that big comeback win against the Mets last night. That could play a big role later in the season. We'll see how those head-to-head matchups play, but they looked really good. So the top 8, I think, are teams that everyone says, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yep. Now with the rankings, how I do it, it's all about what you're doing on the field. I don't care about what we're anticipating coming into the season. I don't care about who you played, especially early in the season. We don't know who's actually going to be good. So keep that in mind as I read you teams number 9 and 10. Number 9, I've got the Chicago Cubs. They took the series from Milwaukee and beat Milwaukee's 2 stud pitchers. They beat Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and made Brandon Woodruff just look silly. The offense was just electric. Happ was sensational for the Cubs. He did get hit in the knee. I believe I saw he's in the starting lineup today, which is good news. Seiya Suzuki looks like what we expect from a NL Rookie of the Year. He looks unbelievable. I really liked what I saw from the Cubs opening weekend.
Yeah, no, can't really argue with it. Milwaukee was coming into the season as one of the big contenders, and Chicago came in and took care of business.
And now number 10.
I know where you're going to go with this. I like it already.
I've got the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah. Yep.
Took 2 of 3 from the Dodgers, won last night against the Rangers. Connor Joe put on an absolute show this weekend. CJ Cron might be one of the best hitters we don't talk about. He just continues to get knock after knock, hit long ball after long ball. The pitching held up their end of the deal. If they can just be average and the offense continues to hit like this Rockies team is not going to be one you want to sleep on all season long.
You don't want to play too comfortable with them. That's for sure. Yeah. Their pitching took out one of the most highly anticipated offense in the sport. So can't argue with that.
Incredible. So there's the top 10 here this week. I'm sure it will look extremely different next week. We'll probably make this a weekly segment and get Jacob's reactions, and I'll give a little bit more reasoning as well as an article to come out. Again, that'll come out on Tuesdays before you see this podcast, and Jacob will react to the top 10 as we record as well. That'll do it, though, for episode 2 of the Kingsmen. Thank you so much for all of your support. Make sure to share this on Facebook, on Instagram. Just get the word out there. I was blown away by the numbers we got on our first podcast. It was awesome. Yeah. We really appreciate the support. If there's anything you want us to talk about, just leave a comment on the YouTube video, on the Facebook post, Instagram post, anything. Send us your questions. We'd love to talk about them. We'd love to hear from you guys. And again, we can't thank you enough for the support. It means the world to us. That'll do it for episode 2. We will be back next week, episode 3, go into baseball a little bit further. Going to talk a little bit about the NFL draft as well, and we'll get an update on what's going on the NBA playoffs. That'll be next week on the Kingsmen.